Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Awesome. Today, we're tackling a story you might think you know, the fall of the Sasanian Empire. But
Yeah.
we're going to go way beyond that simple Arabs conquered and that's it story.
Oh, right.
It's way more interesting than that.
Oh, yeah.
We'll be looking closely at Pervana Porcheriati's book, Decline and Fall of the Sasanian Empire. And she uses some really cool sources like the Exwatanamag.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this sort of official history of all the Sassanian kings. And then also fuchsia narratives, which are basically
Accounts of the early conquests.
yeah,
This is the Islamic conquest.
yeah. So what's really interesting here is
Well, one of the things that really comes out of these sources is that the Sassanian Empire, it wasn't exactly a picture of stability before the Arab armies even showed up.
right
There were, there were cracks in the foundation already.
cracks. I like that word.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about some serious internal struggles here. Porcheriati points to this tension between the Pahlav,
Yeah.
the Parthians,
Uh-huh.
and the Parsec, the Persians.
Right. So you've got...
It's like two major power blocks
Yeah, exactly.
vying for control.
They're like, jockeying for position, trying to kind of like,
Yeah.
exert their dominance.
So it wasn't like a simple story of, invaders versus defenders.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like the empire was starting to crumble kind of from the inside already.
Yeah.
And the Arabs were kind of like able to exploit those weaknesses.
They saw an opportunity and, they took it. And to make things even more complicated, I guess, it wasn't even really just a two-sided conflict. We also have all these powerful Parthian families, the Karins, the Surins, the Ispabudan, the Miran. And these weren't just like noble houses.
Right.
These were like almost mini dynasties in their own right with, their own armies, their own agendas. They often acted totally independently of whoever the Sassanian king was at the time. They would play kingmaker, sometimes even challenge the Sassanian kings directly.
This is sounding like a real-life Game of Thrones.
It really is.
Yeah. So, for instance, the Ispabudan family, they were a big reason why King Hormuz V got deposed, and they were the ones that put Khusro II on the throne.
Yeah, so they were really pulling the strings there.
Major power move. What was their motivation in, backing Khusro II, though? Was it purely political, or was there something more to it?
That's a great question. It's probably a mix of things. I mean, definitely political opportunism, but also potentially, some deeper ideological ties, maybe even personal relationships. We have to remember this was, it was a complex time. Alliances were always shifting.
Yeah.
Loyalties were fluid.
Right.
It's hard to say for sure.
Yeah. And it wasn't just the Ispabudan playing these games. We also have the story of Barami Chuban, a general from the Miran family.
Right.
And he rebelled against Khusro II.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
And it's interesting, he's referred to as Miro Wandak, which basically means slave of Mir.
Right.
And that seems like...
Well, it hints at some possible religious dimensions to all these rivalries.
Oh, okay.
Mir refers to Mithra, that solar deity, very popular in the Roman Empire, but worship also had, roots in Persia as well. The fact that he had this epithet that suggests that, Mir worship may have been pretty strong among certain Parthian families, maybe especially the Miran. And this could have even put them, at odds with the more orthodox Zoroastrianism that the Sassanian kings favored.
So it's not just a power struggle. We're also talking about religious differences layered on top of this. This already volatile situation. It makes you wonder, how did these religious beliefs then translate into, actual political actions and alliances?
Well, it's, religion and politics were very closely connected in the Sasanian Empire. I mean, the king was considered, divinely appointed.
Right.
The Zoroastrian priesthood had a lot of influence. So, religious beliefs, they definitely shaped political decisions and alliances.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's shift gears a little bit and focus in on, the final years of the empire. The story that most people know is that after the Battle of Qadisiyah, the last Sassanian king, Yazgir III, he fled to the Tiabristan region.
Right.
But Porcheriati's research is saying something a little different.
It's saying something a little different. She points out that Yazgir III actually fled eastward, not to Tiabristan. And this is, where things start to get even more interesting because if he had gone to Tiabristan,
right,
he probably could have expected at least some support. The region, it had a history of resisting central authority,
okay,
but he didn't go there. He chose a different path. And, this raises a lot of questions.
Yeah, that's like we're entering a historical mystery novel here.
It really is.
At the center of it all is this guy named Farrukhzad, who was a powerful general. He supported Yazgird III at first, but then he just vanishes from, like, the historical record.
Yeah, he just disappears.
And Poshariati puts forward a really interesting theory about this guy. She suggests that he might actually be the same person who's appearing in these other sources under different names.
Yeah.
So, like, Bav in Tiabaristan histories.
Right.
And then Znabu Abu Farukhan in the future narratives. Wait, so we're talking about one general?
One general, like possibly three different
identities.
Wow. Okay. What makes her think that these are all the same guy? Well, there are a few clues. First of all three of these figures, they're described as powerful military leaders. And they're all operating in, roughly the same geographical area around the same time period. And second, there are these, interesting parallels in and how they're described and also the kinds of actions that they took. So there are definitely some tantalizing hints there that that they might all be the same person.
Okay. I am officially hooked. So if this theory is right, what does it tell us about Farrukhzad's role in the fall of the empire?
Well, if he's the same guy as these other figures, it means he didn't stay loyal to Yazgird III.
Wow.
Instead, he may have actually switched sides and maybe even helped the Arabs conquer parts of the former Sasanian Empire.
Wow. Okay, that's a huge plot twist. So it seems like this Farrukhzad guy is, like, super important for understanding this period.
Yeah, he's a key figure for sure.
But the sources give us this really, like, confusing picture of him.
Yeah, he's a bit of an enigma. But, by piecing together these little bits of information that we have from all these different sources, I think we can start to get a clearer sense of what his role was in this whole, tumultuous period.
And his story, I mean, it really highlights how chaotic and fragmented everything was during those final years.
It really was a time of, upheaval and uncertainty.
Yeah. It really shows you that the fall of the Sassanian Empire wasn't just some, like, simple, straightforward event. There were just so many internal and external factors. All these shifting alliances, personal ambitions.
A lot of moving parts.
Yeah, it's like a tangled web.
Yeah.
And Farrukhzad seems to be right at the center of it all.
It's really fascinating. If we accept this theory about Farrukhzad, I think it really challenges some of our assumptions about how, the Sassanian nobility reacted to the Arab conquests. It wasn't necessarily this unified front of, resistance.
Yeah, it makes it seem like some of these powerful families were, like, willing to make deals with the Arabs. Maybe even saw them as a way to, like, get ahead in this new reality.
It's kind of like, when an empire is falling apart, everyone's just looking out for themselves.
Right.
And the future narratives, they even tell us that Farrukhzad, potentially as Znaba Abu Farukhan, he actually compared the conquering Arabs to the Marwan family.
Wow.
He said that both of them were driven by envy.
Interesting.
So it almost sounds like he's trying to, justify his own actions by drawing this parallel between the Arabs and these, rival Parthian families.
Yeah, that is a very telling detail.
It is.
Because it shows that, I mean, it wasn't just about this, like, abstract, political maneuvering.
Right.
There were, like, personal rivalries, grudges, fueling these decisions.
Absolutely.
It's almost Shakespearean.
Yeah.
You've got the ambition, the betrayal, maybe even a little bit of revenge thrown in there.
It really does.
Yeah.
It humanizes these historical figures, doesn't it? I mean, they weren't just like, names on a page.
Right.
They were real people.
Yeah.
With their own motivations, desires, resentments, and all of those personal factors, could have these huge consequences on the course of history.
It really makes you think about how those same dynamics still play out today.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, how often do we see, political decisions being influenced by, like, somebody's personal ambition or...
all the time. Rivalries, it's human nature. It doesn't really change.
Yeah.
Even over hundreds of years. The players might change, the costumes might be different. But those basic motivations, they're timeless.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about the military side of, the Sasanian decline. But Shariati also gives us a lot of insight into the religious landscape of that period. And this, I think, adds another layer of complexity to our understanding.
I mean, we've already talked about, that potential rivalry between mere worship and Zoroastrianism. But there's actually even more to it than that. So, for example, Shariati, she talks about how the T-Aberistan region, despite, generally adhering to Zoroastrianism, they also had their own distinct religious traditions and practices. And these local beliefs, they continued to be influential even after the Arab conquest.
So even within Zoroastrianism, there were like regional variations, different interpretations. Makes sense. Kind of like how today, even within one religion, you have different, denominations, sects.
Exactly. With their own unique beliefs.
And those religious differences, they could be just as, divisive as political rivalries.
Okay.
So, for instance, the T-Aberistan region, they were really attached to this figure of King Feridun, this mythical hero. He's, the one who defeated the evil serpent king Zahak.
I remember reading about Feridun. He's a very fascinating figure. Really symbolizes like justice, good governance in like Persian mythology. But what's his connection to the religious landscape of T-Aberistan?
Well, in T-Aberistan, Feridun, he's often depicted with a cow.
Okay.
And the cow plays a big role in their local legends. And this emphasis on the cow is probably a legacy of Mithraism. The worship of Mithra, when we mentioned earlier, was associated with bulls and cows. So even though T-Aberistan was officially Zoroastrian,
these older beliefs and symbols, they clearly still resonated with the people there.
It's amazing to think about these, really ancient symbols and myths persisting for centuries, even after the political and religious landscape had totally changed. It really does speak to the lasting power of culture and belief.
It's really remarkable. And these remnants of mere worship in T-Aberistan, they're just one example of how the Sassanian past continued to shape, the cultural and religious identity of this region, even after the empire itself was gone.
It's a good reminder that history isn't just like dates, battles. It's about the impact of these ideas, beliefs, traditions. So even though the Sassanian Empire fell, its legacy lived on in these subtle but significant ways.
Exactly. And those legacies, they often pop up in these really unexpected places, like in local customs, in folk tales, even in the symbols that people choose to use. It's like a hidden tapestry. And, if you know what to look for, you can start to see those threads of the past woven into the present.
That's a great analogy.
It really is.
It's like we're, history detectives piecing together these clues from different sources, different periods to try to get this bigger picture.
And what we're starting to see is that the fall of the Sasanian Empire, it wasn't just this like political or military event. It was also this, cultural religious transformation with both ruptures and continuities.
It wasn't just the end of like an empire. It was the beginning of something brand new, a new chapter in the history of Persia and, the wider region.
Absolutely.
It really makes you realize that that history is just so much more than just like, names and dates. It's about understanding that whole tapestry, of cultures and beliefs and power dynamics that really shape events.
Absolutely. And it's about questioning those simple narratives, the ones that we often get told. The story of the Sassanian Empire's decline, I mean, this is a perfect example. It wasn't just, the Arabs coming in and sweeping everything away. It was so much more complicated than that.
We've seen how, internal divisions and religious tensions, even personal ambitions, all these things played a part in weakening the empire.
They really created this like perfect storm, I guess you could say, that made the empire vulnerable.
And even after the conquest, those same underlying factors, they continue to shape the region.
They did. And in fact, poor Shariati points out that a lot of those powerful Parthian families that we've been talking about, like the Ispabudhan, the Karins, the Kanaranian, they actually, they retained a lot of their power and influence even under Arab rule.
So it wasn't like a total break.
It wasn't a clean break.
The old power structures, they didn't just like disappear.
They adapted.
Yeah.
They found ways to, work within the new system.
Yeah.
So in some ways, the Arab conquest, you could almost see it as like a change of rulers at the top.
Okay.
And not like a complete transformation of society.
It makes you wonder, how much did the social and political landscape actually change?
That's a good question.
And those former Sassanian territories.
Yeah. Was it really just like, swapping out one elite for another?
Right.
Or did the Arab conquest bring about like deeper, more fundamental changes?
Yeah. That's a really tough question. And to be honest, I don't think there's an easy answer. I mean, there's evidence to support both sides of that argument.
On the one hand, we have those Parthian families who, they seem to adapted. But on the other, we also know that, the conquest brought about big cultural
religious changes.
Islam gradually became the dominant religion in Persia. Arabic language and culture had, this huge impact. So it really was this complex process of both continuity and change.
It sounds like we need to go even deeper, look beyond the surface, like you said, try to really understand the long-term consequences of this huge turning point.
And, that's what I love about studying history. It's not just about, memorizing facts and dates.
Right.
It's about wrestling with these big questions, exploring different perspectives and trying to, put the pieces of the puzzle together.
And sometimes the pieces don't fit together neatly.
Sometimes they don't. Sometimes, we end up with more questions than answers.
Right.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
That's part of what makes it so, so interesting.
It keeps us coming back for more.
Yeah, exactly. Those unanswered questions, they keep us keep us thinking critically, keep us questioning our assumptions, keep us searching for that, deeper understanding.
Well, this deep dive into the fall of the Sasanian Empire has definitely been a great example of that.
It has.
We uncovered all these fascinating details, challenged some assumptions, and, ended up with some really interesting questions to think about.
It reminds us that that history's never really finished. It's this ongoing conversation, this constant process of, discovery and reinterpretation.
So to our listener, we really encourage you to keep exploring this.
Yeah.
Dig into the sources, ask your own questions, draw your own conclusions. The Sassanian Empire might be gone, but its story and the lessons we can learn from it, I think those are still relevant today.
Absolutely.